joining us for this segment is none other than State Representative Alyson Sullivan, representing the 7th Plymouth District, which of course is Whitman, East Bridgewater, and the great town of Abington. Representative, good to see you again and hear you.
Oh, great to see you. I wish it was different circumstances where we could be back in the studios like old times, but we evolve, right?
We do evolve. And before we get into the meat and potatoes of our conversation, a hearty congratulations to you on securing a second term in office.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
What's it like knowing that the people have spoken, that you are going to be, you'll have another legislative session ahead of you for 2 years?
hmm Curtis is very excited, that's for sure.
I can see
What's that?
he bubbles with excitement. You could tell.
He does. He does. I'm very excited. I'm, honored to serve the 7th Plymouth District again for another 2 years. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve for the past 2 years. Obviously, my first go around of it. So going into my second term of office, you know things that you didn't know going in 2 years ago. And getting to really know the district and what the needs are in the individual towns within the district as a whole, and the Commonwealth as a whole as well. And I think it's important that we continue on the fight on some of the issues that we've already started. And I'm happy that I get to continue that fight.
You didn't have the foresight 2 years ago when you ran for office to know that half the way through probably the second half of your term would involve a pandemic.
All right, yeah.
Latest COVID order handed out by the governor requires masks. Give me your thoughts as to where we are right now when it comes to COVID-19.
I definitely think we're in a better position than we were back in March of this year. Understanding the virus, knowing what we could do to hopefully slow or stop the spread is very important. And I appreciate everybody that has followed the guidelines up to this point. I know that the most recent guidelines, especially around masks, have changed, where the governor is requiring anyone of the age of 5 years old and over to wear a mask, including outside. And I've heard from several constituents regarding this new regulation and their frustration around it. When the mask requirements were put in place initially, I followed those rules, and I still continue to follow those regulations because of the fact that I have a 94-year-old grandfather at my mom's house that I do see, and I have a young niece and nephews, and I worry about their health. So when I do go into the grocery store or into a gas station or into a restaurant, I do wear a mask. However, I also enjoy being able to go outside and take a nice walk. Aside from not being able to walk fully right now because of my surgery, but being able to go outside and get a breath of fresh air. And I think the requirement of wearing a mask when you can socially distance is very frustrating for some in this community and across the Commonwealth. And I have heard from a lot of people regarding this requirement. Some of the other guidelines that the governor's put in place, requiring restaurants to shut down at 9:30 at night, is something that is having a very high impact on our community here in the 7th Plymouth District and across the Commonwealth. And a lot of people are having a hard time understanding why the governor has put these regulations in place.
Still seeing a rise of COVID cases in Massachusetts. Actually, it's over the past few weeks, it's grown. I know it was somewhere around daily we would see maybe 300-400 cases. Now it's kind of doubled and tripled. What are your thoughts? What are your concerns as a legislator seeing those numbers rise again?
Obviously the concerns are hospitalizations and the surge on hospitals. We want to make sure that we have the resources that we not maybe necessarily had back in March to continue the fight within a hospital setting. We also need to make sure we're protecting the school-age children, the teachers that are back in school. We need to make sure we're protecting our grocery store workers. But I think we're in a better position than we were when this first initially happened, as far as knowing what to expect, knowing how to handle it, and knowing how to get these resources out in a timely fashion. We did a great job here in Plymouth County with the CARES Act, getting funding to our local communities. And that's been a bonus because we've been able to compensate for some of the lack of financial resources that the state government hasn't been able to give out to the towns and the cities locally. It's concerning that the numbers are rising, but this was already predicted that there would be somewhat of a rise. But I also think numbers are also rising because more people are getting tested. We're very adamant about, if you have been potentially exposed to it, if you have symptoms of it, to get a test and to make sure that you're cleared. So I know several people that have been potentially exposed because of the fact that they've been around somebody who's been tested positive. Luckily, they've been tested negative, but it's just precautions we're taking that not necessarily took back in March because we didn't have the resources to do that. So I think it's expected to see a rise in the positive cases.
Again, if you're just tuning into the conversation, we're speaking with State Representative Alyson Sullivan. She is our guest here on this particular segment, talking about FIA's rollback school education. Interesting that you mentioned that, knowing that there's still an ongoing dialogue in regards to um, fiscal 2021, the budget. What are you hearing from municipal leaders or folks in regards to funding through the rest of the fiscal year?
It's been a battle, where we haven't, we're going into a budget debate. We're hopefully going to have a budget out. But it's been a scary battle because of the unknown. Everyone's all, including myself, is a fear of the unknown. What's going to happen? How's it going to happen? We're going to fight as hard as we can to make sure that the schools are taken care of and that the local aid is taken care of, because we know it's been hit hard. Um, but with everything shut down, it's, revenue's not going to be the same that it was prior to a pandemic. So it's a scary situation that we're in.
Have you had a chance to speak with anyone in the governor's office in regards to? I mean, you're looking at the rest of 2021, but before you know it, we're going to be talking about putting together a new budget for fiscal 22.
Mhm.
And do you take how you see the ebb and flow of revenue, for this year, and can you apply it to next year, knowing that maybe there might be a trend upwards?
Well, that's the thing. It's like I go back to that unknown. You can only be as good as the data you have, right? So we won't really know those answers until we get into that budget debate. I know the intent is to hopefully be on time next year when it comes to a budget. And that's been the talk throughout the caucus, throughout my colleagues, both on the Republican and Democratic side. But it's definitely it's a fear of everybody's.
We've come up on Veterans Day. Talk to me about the importance of Veterans Day and our veterans and recognizing them.
I think it's very important that we recognize veterans every day, not necessarily on a one specific day, but I think it's important that we do have a specific day in our calendar year that we take time out of our busy lives, our hectic lives, and in our emotional lives right now during a pandemic to recognize the men and women who have served this country. I know that I personally take this day as something very near and dear to my heart, with my grandfather being a 94-year-old World War II veteran. Hearing his stories never shocks me, never amazes me. It's always something that I look forward to hear what he had to go through when he was 18, 19 years old. And then my sister, she's a veteran, and the stories that she has told me and some of the things that she hasn't. And I know she's seen things that that she holds near and dear to her heart. I think it's important that we recognize those men and women, including the men and women that aren't here with us today, for their service, and the families that sacrificed with them, because it's not just the veterans themselves that are going through it; it's their families that are kind of left behind.
We're talking about COVID-19 and teasing that holidays are upon us already. We're talking Thanksgiving
Sure.
is around the corner, Christmas, New Year's, and knowing that you have such a large family, how is the Sullivan family celebrating this year, knowing that the governor's like, if you're gonna have a large gathering, you probably shouldn't when it comes to like Thanksgiving and stuff.
Yep. So, it's been a conversation my mom and I have had on several occasions. Um, because she has her father to worry about. Like I said, my 94-year-old grandfather lives in the house with her. So she has to think about who's coming in the house, who's he's being exposed to, because he's on the higher risk level of the spectrum. So Normally on a Thanksgiving, it's a very intimate Thanksgiving dinner. It's usually my immediate family that's there at my parents' house. I think the intent is we're still going to have that same Thanksgiving gathering. I do see my mom on an almost daily basis. Since I had surgery, my mom has been very helpful with me. But Christmas Eve is usually a big party and celebration at my house, at my parents' house. I don't think it's going to look the same this year, especially if COVID is still so prominent in the community. So it's day to day changes back and forth. So we'll see for that.
Well, we know there was news recently about a vaccine that it went through the trials, did
Hmm.
quite well, and they're talking about maybe starting to distribute it. Is there hope that maybe we see enough of it towards the year's end that we could start off 2021 on the right foot?
I do hope. I do hope one day we can get back to normal, and normal meaning normal life pre-COVID, not a new normal, not what normal is going to be like, but a normal where you can embrace people. It's sad to see that. I know growing up, it was always technology, put it aside, dinner time, put it aside, breakfast time, put it aside, and come together as a family. And one of the good things of COVID is it brought that family element back to that table where people were kind of forced to stay in, forced to spend time with their family. In some cases it was very a scary situation because we don't know what a home life is like, but it's also now we're back to this technology phase where you and I are looking at each other through a computer screen and not having that face-to-face conversation. And I can't wait for that. I can't wait to be back to that normal setting where we can be in a house chamber and have an active debate in the house setting where we're voting right there. It's not on a phone. I definitely can't wait for that to be back to some normalcy.
And again, if you are just tuning in, we are speaking with State Representative Alyson Sullivan as we're a couple of minutes away from wrapping up our conversation. Looking forward to the new legislative session. When do you start planning as to whether bills that you want to file or looking at other colleagues' bills to possibly support? When does that process start for you?
So that process will formally start in January. However, Curtis and I have been looking at the bills that I previously filed, bills that have been filed in the past on what we can do to improve them and file and refile something or file something completely new. So that's been an active, going since I'd say April, August of this year, what we're going to look at and how we're going to tackle those issues. Because some of the bills that I filed in 2019 are still very much issues today that need to be refiled and readdressed. Some very important issues, I believe.
Do you have any goals that you'll set for the new legislative session, or is it a matter of a wait and see because of COVID?
I hope that we can be back to normal where we can be in the House chamber. My goal is to hopefully bring more active debates to the House floor, more so than we've seen in the past. But it's difficult. I remember doing the police reform bill, and it was all over the phone, and trying to go from one phone to the next with calling into one line to debate on the House floor to calling back into your line to vote. It was definitely a frustrating process. So I do hope we kind of get back to that normalcy where I can get back to that rostrum and be able to debate some issues that are very important to me and my community.
What is it about debating that you like? Is there some element to it? Is it just a matter of being able to at least extol your thoughts on the process and being able to at least make sure that if there is an angle that it's being explored and discussed?
Mhm. So my grandmother always said to me, God rest her soul, is that I was always a debater. I could have been wrong, but I debated an issue. Um, I think it's important to debate. I think the reason why it's important to debate is because with debating, it's all recorded and on the House floor and seeing it, there's transparency in debating. So when I look at the people that have elected me to be in this position, and I get up on a House floor and I debate an issue that is very near and dear to me and the community that I serve, it's important for people that vote for me and that support me and people that don't vote for me to see what my positions are on certain issues. And I think it's important for there to be more conversation, whether you're on one side of the aisle or the other. And I don't necessarily mean party aisles, I mean on issue aisles. And it's important to hear both sides, otherwise, we won't move forward.
There she is, Alyson Sullivan, the great debater. If constituents want to reach out to you, they have an item that they want your office to take a look at, and it's
Mhm.
well within your range of expertise. How can they get in touch with you?
Email is definitely the best way right now because of the fact that we're fully remote. You can email me at Alyson, so ALYSON .Sullivan at mahouse.gov. And you can also email my legislative aide, Curtis Boucher. It's CURTIS Boucher, BOUCHER, at mahouse.gov. And then our office phone, which we do get the voicemails from that phone number, is 617-722-2305.
Excellent. Well, we want to thank you very much for your time and patience, and we look forward to many more conversations down the road.
Thank you, Kevin. Always a pleasure.